Hi, this is Christy Lister, and I am with Robin Michael and Ernie Stevens on Beyond the First Response. How are you guys today?
Great.
Doing fantastic. Thank you.
Good, good. We're excited to have you on here, so thank you. I kind of hunted you down on Twitter. Um, I'm in sales, so that's what I do for a living. I see people that I'm interested in talking to, and I just talk.
Well, I don't have to buy anything, do I?
No, no. Unless you need
Okay.
to
All right.
refinance your mortgage, then I'm here for you. I can do it
I
across
think I'll
the
be all right.
country.
Thank you.
You're
Pleasure to be
welcome.
here. Thank you.
So we always have a first question to start the podcast. So I'm not going to lie, I'm not so prepared as I normally am. I have a lot of questions in my head, but Robin, do you have a question for him?
Sure. I'll use the one we used earlier. River, lake, or ocean?
River, lake, or ocean? I love the sound of the ocean, but however, I'm going to pivot because usually with a river or a lake, there's some hiking trails nearby. So I'm going to pivot and just roll with river. That way I get the sound and the trails.
I knew I liked you, Ernie. That's how I am too.
Yeah, and you can get your raft and throw some beer on there. And
That as well.
Yeah,
yeah.
I've got an RV, so let's just hit the trifecta and
All
visit all of them. So
I have a trailer too. It just kind of sits in a spot though year round
I've seen
because
those.
I need
Yeah.
not a mobile home. It's an actual trailer that I could hook up, but I need a truck that actually is heavy enough to hook it up before I can actually take it anywhere. But
Yeah,
that's
there's
my
always a
getaway.
hook.
Yeah, it's always a problem. But it's my getaway. It's how I reconnect with myself. So that's all that matters,
I love it.
right? So Ernie, I first met you when I messaged you. Can you come on our podcast?
Twitter.
But but I was very interested because back in 2019, my ex-husband Ken died by suicide on Father's Day. Robin's husband, Robin is on the fire side. I'm on the police side, and he passed away a week later. So we've managed to we managed to bond unknowingly that happened at that time. And watching your documentary that you guys did really hit home and opened up a lot of aha moments for me, and those have just stayed kind of in the back of my mind. And I know that you've written a book and that it's your passion, and I know that you're retired now. You work at Strack, which you're going to have to define that for me because that was a lot of words earlier.
Yeah, STRAC is the Southwest Texas Regional Advisory Council.
So what do they do?
They do everything. So STRAC is involved with any type of emergency operations within the state of Texas. And each RAC out of STRAC has a certain amount of counties that they're responsible for. The Southwest region is in charge of 22 counties. So for example, if a major tornado, hurricane hits, a jetliner goes down, STRAC would respond with all emergency response, such as mobile ICU units. They control all the air life traffic. So when you hear that, you're like, why would you? I mean, it has nothing to do with it being a police officer. However, STRAC has taken in under their umbrella all mental health within Bexar County. So all the traffic of where patients go, putting together multidisciplinary teams where we pair an officer with a clinician and a medic to respond to crisis calls now in the community instead of just sending an officer. So they've really redefined what crisis response looks like here. And they brought me on board to kind of assist with the mental health portion.
And I think that's actually a beautiful thing because I've heard of, counselors or psychologists jumping in the squad car with police officers to kind of get to know them. I'm a big factor of I feel like it's every 3 months there's a change if you're not processing things properly. And
Yes.
I find that even on the family side, looking back now, obviously on the other side of suicide, you really take a look at what the hell happened in your family or what did you miss? And it should be noted that it's okay to miss things because you're living in the moment and we don't always see things, that's hindsight's 2020 and that's okay. And you should not feel guilty because you miss signs or misunderstood signs?
You know what? I love how you put that, Christy, because I love to be at that 30,000 foot view where I can look down and see everything. But when I do that, it takes me out of being present,
Right.
right? Which is where I need to be comfortable with myself. So I love how you structured that, because that rings so true in so many different facets of life. And it's something to think about. So excellent point.
Thank you. Yeah. So you guys have done you guys did an amazing job documenting, all of that. Is there something and seeing the community during that take in and see that one, cops are not all bad, and that you do care, and that there is a struggle. And I know that even after, if memory serves me, even after you guys did that and implemented what you've done, you still have had some loss to suicide.
Yeah, so the documentary did several things. It put the spotlight on the mental health unit in San Antonio and the type of response that the community was receiving, which was plainclothes officers going out in unmarked cars with a clinician from time to time and trying to de-escalate situations or provide resources and then do follow-up and wraparound services. But what it also did was it captured, and this was not planned during the documentary, but it captured the individual behind the badge based on what was going on in the moment. So within that time frame of filming, we had 3 officers commit suicide.
Wow.
During the filming of this documentary. So the documentary actually took on its own spin, and they introduced the part where we are teaching at the in-service, and we began to introduce having a real raw conversation about where we're at as a profession. And you see in the documentary, the officers are just like, I don't want to talk about this. No, I don't. You're making me uncomfortable. And you can see it. But it's like, why are we lying to ourselves? Like we're killing ourselves at a rate of 3 to 1, 4 to 1 in the line, then getting killed in the line of duty. So why aren't we being raw and real about this? And I think the documentary really picked up on that as it's kind of took a life of its own.
It absolutely have. And I go through departments now asking to speak to them because they need to see that it affects family as well, which is why Robin and I are doing Beyond the First Response and really stepping up in roles saying, hey, guys, your family serves with you.
Yeah.
And,
And I want to, you know what, time out, because I want to say thank you. I'm sorry for not doing this right off the bat, but I want to say, and I'm about to get emotional, sorry, but I want to say thank you to you as family members for your service, because my wife will tell you, she always felt like left out,
yes.
but not, she didn't feel like degraded or, I don't know, dismissive. She was just kind of always behind the scenes. And it wasn't fair, right? It's not fair to the family, but she accepted that as, well, that's my role and I'm okay with it. So I don't know y'all personally or how you accepted your role as a spouse of a first responder. I can only imagine the difficulty that is. And I just wanted to say thank you for your service and for your support.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Here, make me tear
I've kind of trained myself to hold my emotion back.
Yeah.
I know that's surprising until later on, but I bring my emotion back in. It does hit me once in a while, but I've been trained so well as a first responder spouse to remove myself that I tend to still do it. And it does shock like departments sometimes. I'm like, look, I'm as good at it as you are. Watch, let's compete. I don't want to compete because I can bring it back.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah,
difficult.
and that's tough. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I did it for years, held it in.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned earlier, we were talking about the difficulty of Father's Day. One of my worst memories on working in patrol was a fatality accident that I worked where I worked on this girl CPR for, it seemed like forever. It was probably about 7 or 8 minutes before the paramedics got there. And she passed, and I can relive that moment in slow motion. I can tell you everything about it, every smell, every sound, everything visually that I looked at. And Father's Day for me has really sucked over the last 6 years now. So it's amazing what you will try to, I guess, compartmentalize and hold in because I want to enjoy Father's Day. I want to. It's just difficult because I had to make that phone call to a parent, and
Yeah.
and it was difficult.
It's understandable. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a picture of that Ken took when he took the kids out for Father's Day. That was the last picture, not knowing within hours that that was legitimately the last picture. And you can just kind of see in his eyes, he was a different man. It was like he was like these I'm doing this for them, and you know, and it's just
There's a
it
pain that's in, and there's a
yeah.
lot of with Eric in those last weeks too, or really the last
Well, and there's
year.
a pain, and at the same time, it's I'm feeling free. Like that decision was made
Mhm.
at that moment, and that's what you know. He was going to enjoy his time with the kids, and I'm glad he did. I'm glad the kids got to see, you know, the love he had for them.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
difficult.
and it can't be explained. My partner for years at the school district, my off-duty job was working at a local school, high school. And I had the same partner for years. And after a shift one day, he went home and he completed suicide in the garage. And I got the call that evening, and it was my patrol sergeant who kind of scheduled people for the overtime. And he said, "Hey, I need to meet with you and talk to you." And I'm like, "Okay, like, what am I in trouble for? Like, I don't ever do anything wrong." And I remember when he pulled up next to me and told me, I was like, why would you say that to me? Like, I just saw him. Like, we just worked together. Like, where is he at? And I'll fix this. Just tell me where he's at. And it's like, I would not accept that
Right.
at all. Because I'm like, I'm telling you, I just saw him. He would have said something to me. And, for years, for probably 2, 3 years, I was really beating myself up because I'm supposed to be an expert, right, in recognizing somebody that's maybe struggling with depression or anxiety, whatever the case may be, or just good at communicating with people and picking up on things when they say stuff. And man, I either missed this by a mile or he just didn't want me to see it. And it's difficult because you do this self-blame game for a long time. And I just want your listeners to know, don't do it.
Right.
Do not play the blame game on yourself. All you can do is what you can do, and be there when you need somebody to be there.
Right. And it's not so much missing. They don't want you to know. They don't want you to see that side of them.
Yeah, and we had that conversation with another guest that a big I hate the see the signs memes. And I think that that's kind of something within the widow community and really, I guess, suicide survivor community, because it puts the responsibility on all of us to be able to see that someone else is going to do this. So sometimes there's not signs, and we have to accept that. There's going to be times we're not going to save everybody, and there's going to be times that we're not going to be able to tell that someone is about to do what they're going to do. And with Eric, I still have a lot of guilt behind that. Watching the documentary, I actually started tearing up when you guys were talking. I think her name was Kendra, off of the overpass, because I could have called 911 that day, and I chose not to because I didn't think, he threatened that if I did, that he was going to do it. Well, he ended up doing it anyway. I don't know if there would have been a different outcome or if I would have just pushed it off to another day, but I don't know that there was crisis cops here in Richmond, California. I have no idea. And those are the kinds of things that we're searching for, those kinds of answers. What are the resources for family members, at least for first responder community? Because I didn't know of any. I did see some things here and there, but I didn't know who to call.
What's interesting about Kendra, and first of all, thank you for mentioning her. She's an incredible individual who has been through a lot of trauma in her life.
Yeah.
But on that particular call, if you noticed, Joe and I were working overtime for patrol, just trying to make a little extra money. Why not work a double shift? Because that's what we do. And we showed up in uniform, which we normally would never do. It's just we didn't have a choice that night. So I want, for people that look at the different types of responses and say, well, the uniform is a barrier. Well, yes, it is a barrier. However, if you stick to your game plan of your training, of what you know about crisis intervention training, if you are truly trying to make a connection with somebody and you are focusing on the person and not the problem, you can make rapport and build a connection, which will lead to empathy. And I think we had to fight for that with Kendra, which was, there were so many dynamics on that because one, we're on a bridge. Two, there's a lot of traffic going by, so it's hard to hear. Three, I am terrified of heights because everybody's like, why'd you sit down? Well, now you know. Like, I wasn't getting any closer. Like, I couldn't have saved her if I tried, right? If that was her decision to jump. I didn't have a harness on. We teach, don't try to grab somebody about to jump. You may go with them. So I had to stick to what I knew was right, but have to just fight through that barrier of her just seeing the uniform. I needed her to see me as Ernie because I needed to see her as Kendra, who was having the worst day of her life. I needed to see her and connect with her. And, and Joe did a good job, collaborating with the conversation. So we, by the grace of God, we had a good outcome on that one.
Well, and I'm glad that you point that out. You're seeing her at the worst time of her life. What people fail to see is officers, first responders. You're not seeing them at the worst time of their life. And they're doing that in private because you were there to help the community. And you're human. People make mistakes, people have feelings, but I don't know how that disconnect has happened, so it's fractured so much that it's getting worse over the years instead of better.
And it's fractured, right? Because departments are not really investing into their human capital, right? They're not building these cultures of wellness. So is it really fair to a community that you're sending an officer or a first responder, a firefighter, or a paramedic out to respond to you when they're working double shifts, when they're tired, when they're malnourished because they don't eat good, they're drinking Red Bull all night, eating Twizzlers like Joe. They're going through divorces, they're financially strapped. They got all this going on, just like everybody else in the world, yet they have to come and be professional and try to figure out what is the best solution here to either solve a medical issue, solve a criminal issue, or behavioral health issue, right? And it builds up over time, right? And it will take its toll if you don't have some good coping mechanisms in place to try to decompress.
Absolutely. And I always refer to year 5. That's when I noticed it. Looking back and evaluating, that's when I noticed a change in Ken, that the shutdown occurred. Year 5 of being on the department. And I've heard that over and over. And I think that Robin and I have kind of talked about it even on Fire. It's about year 5. It's like you train to disengage and you're going back and engaging, but it becomes so cumbersome that you just stop engaging.
Yeah, you definitely disconnect, right? And you disconnect with the community, you disconnect with your coworkers, you disconnect with your family. And what drives me crazy, what just boils my blood is when something happens and then you hear an officer say, yeah, it was a matter of time. We saw this coming. And whether it's another officer getting arrested for DWI, it doesn't have to be a suicide. It can be a policy that they violated or a behavior issue, and then they get in trouble. And then you hear officers, yeah, it was a matter of time. We knew it. Well, if you know it, why aren't we doing something about it? Like, why? It just, I don't understand the culture. And I would teach, when we would teach in service, me and Joe, we would say, look, if you're seeing something, say something. I know that saying seems burned out and old and rhetorical, but it's the truth. Like, if somebody sees me start to disconnect and that's not who I am, somebody better come up to me and check me and figure out what's the issue, because who knows what the outcome could be if you don't.
Right, exactly.
We've got a culture just in America in general of being afraid to get involved. So it takes courage on that person's part to go up to you, whoever it is that's having a crisis, because most likely you're going to get angry with them and they don't want that confrontation. Or two, there's, whether it's true or not, there's this belief that you're going to get in trouble, you're going to get put on administrative leave, you're going to lose your job. And I know for Eric, that was a real concern. He voiced it to me multiple times. And I don't know if it was true or not. I have a feeling that it probably was at that time. I don't think now if it happened, it would be true, but then it might have been. And I mean, that it's got to start at the top. We've got to change the stigma, and there cannot be repercussions for people asking for help.
Right. And you nailed it, Robin, because it has to start from the top, right? Officers, even though we had a pretty good plan in place when an officer needed some assistance, we would be able to go, really not have to do a whole lot of command notification, find out what the officer needed. Maybe they needed an emergency change of shift. Maybe they needed some help with some depression, anxiety, whatever it was. We were able to kind of handle that at our level and maybe one supervisory level ahead of us, but it didn't always have to go up to the chief's office, because once it gets up there, here comes all the liability. Oh no, we can't have this. We need a psych eval. You don't always need that. That's why officers and first responders are not asking for help, because they're scared of what you just said. Now, is the needle moving? I hope so, because as we start seeing a transition in the way policing is done, and they're bringing in more training for mental health, which brings in more wellness and resiliency and peer support programs within a department, I think you're going to start seeing that as some of these officers who have grown up kind of in this wellness culture now will start accepting that as they make rank and move up. And my prayer is that we can go 1 year with zero suicides as in law enforcement and first responders.
Well, and we know, I mean, our numbers based on, I did not look today, but I know that so far, just in police reported, and we say reported because we know there's actually a ton more, 8 have occurred in police, 4 reported so far in fire. That those are just numbers being reported. So to get to 0, it would be a blessing, but I also think that we're fooling ourselves because they're not being reported, because it's a personal issue, or even the retired officers, and those are not being reported. Very rarely do those get reported, and we can't make change if we don't talk about it and we don't report those numbers.
Right. And which leads me to another avenue, right? Is why aren't we talking about it? Because before I left the final year I was with San Antonio, Joe and I were given an opportunity. We had an 8-hour in service that we had to do for updates for mental health. And we get the material, and it's the same burned out material as it was 4 years ago and 4 years ago before that. And I'm like, why are we teaching the same thing that they have been learning the last 8 years as an update? Like, I don't get this. So we were able to kind of pull out the mandatory stuff we had to touch on, but then Joe created a really good 6-prong approach to wellness. And he opened up with a personal story about his own addictions to like pornography and things that he struggled with. And the year before he left, he was able to put something like 23 officers into treatment for the first time in their careers.
That's huge.
So if 2 things, right? One, you have to be able to talk about it, but 2, you have to be available as well, right? There has to be an opportunity and availability. And if we can provide that as a profession, why wouldn't a department or organization who has invested so much money and time into an individual, why would they want to cut ties with them so quick instead of trying to invest back into them, saying, we're here for you? And if you look at it, this is another thing that's just mind blowing, right? Sorry if I'm ranting, but look at the way that we recruit. Like, get a brochure, get a pamphlet and open it up. What's in there? A firefighter with a hose, a police officer holding a canine or coming out of a helicopter, SWAT team, like all this cool crap, right? That's who we're trying to bring to the profession. But why don't we quit lying and saying that's 1% of the profession? Let's show an officer with their arm around another officer saying, it's going to be okay, man. I'm sorry you had to see that. And I'm going to be here with you and for you if you need something. Like, from rookie to retirement, why aren't we better supporting our first responders? I mean, as a community, I think that they would support us. In fact, I know they would. But as an organization, why aren't you giving us the justice and the opportunity to support us as well? It blows my mind sometimes.
It really does. It's sad, and it goes back to, we're not going to talk about it. You see things, brush it off, suck it up, get back out there. But it all happens at different, things affect you differently. You might be going through something. You might have a child. You might have your 16-year-old and you're going on scene, and there's a 16-year-old that's clearly going to affect you in a more prominent way than it would a rookie that has no kids.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah. I mean,
debriefings, like here, I feel like debriefing should be immediate, required, and in a lot of the departments, they're not required.
Yeah, same with fire. And if
so
you say that you do want to go off shift after you've had a rough call, then, again, you're ostracized, or the worry is there that they're going to be talking behind your back that you're weak. So,
So 2 points to this, right? Usually the fire department does a really good job with critical incident stress management. So usually after a call, I know here they're allowed to go back to the station and kind of check out a service and decompress and talk about kind of debrief the situation. Where in law enforcement, you don't have that, right? It's get back in your car and go to the next call. What I'm advocating for when I talk to other departments are, why aren't we doing a mandatory just mental health check-in annually?
Yes.
Like
yep.
give them an 8-hour day, give it to them on the books. Hey, you have a mental health day, but with that 8-hour day, you have to schedule an appointment, whether it's in-house with psych services or with a private provider, but you need to go just, hey, I just want to go in and talk about what's happened this last year and just determine whether or not what I talk about needs more treatment, more debriefing, or I just needed to talk and get it over with. Like give up one day, police department, fire department, to these first responders and let them get something off their chest instead of making them take a sick day or letting them or causing them never to even want to speak up in the first place. So there's a lot of things that can be done.
And making them make the decision to go and talk to somebody, because more than likely when you're in the middle of a crisis, you just want to feel better. You're going to self-medicate. You're going to do whatever it is to feel better in that moment. For you to have the resolve to actually say, I want to go make a phone call to a mental health specialist, it takes a few people to kind of hold your hand through that. So if it's, and I used to say this all the time to Eric, why isn't there, like you just said, every year, every 6 months, whatever it is, it's just a mandatory check-in. That way, nobody can say anything about it. You're all doing it. There's no stigma attached to it because it's mandatory and everybody's doing it.
Yeah. And there's some good apps now that,
Yeah.
some of them are pricey, some of them not. Mindbase is one of them. Cortico is one of them. I mean, there's several out there, but now it puts the opportunity and the availability at the first responder's thumb that they can click on that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to get information about anxiety, about sleeping disorders. It can give them opportunity to connect with a peer support member, make an appointment with a therapist. So there is some applications out there, and I would love to see organizations really invest in those and make that available, because it's not only available to the first responder, a lot of them are making it available to the families.
I was going to say that Cortico does. I know one of our local police departments here that I go and talk to their new recruits, Joliet Police Department. They just had got a grant for that Cortico, so they're hoping that continues. It's for the year, but the availability to help these officers and just the civilians that are working there, the admins, all of them, and their families. That's a huge tool because you can do it in the privacy of your own home and not feel like you're being peered at and looked at and questioned.
Yeah, and there's a lot you can do with these, right? For example, I'll use Mindbase because I know about both of them, but like with Mindbase, what it does is it works off of the CAD system. So if you're a police officer and maybe you've responded to a domestic violence, a sexual assault, and then a suicide that week, you would get a push notification, and it's completely anonymous. You would get a push notification on your phone saying, hey, you came in at a moderate risk for sleep deprivation or something. Here's some resources available to you. And in that same app, they'll give you things like relationship issues, sleep issues, dieting, exercise, all these different apps that you can click on. And then you, as the app organizer, can actually get that information and say, hey, 33% of your officers has clicked on financial responsibility. We don't know who, but we know that 30% have. So at your in-service training coming up, why don't we bring in a speaker on financial responsibility and let them talk to your department for an hour or two, right? So I think some apps are actually looking at that and trying to get ahead of some of these. Like, you can't avoid the trauma from happening, but if
No.
you get on it immediately and don't let it fester, I think you have a good chance at hopefully cutting down on some of these tragedies.
Well, like with critical incident, you think about it, most of the time, if you sit down and have that conversation, it you don't need to go any farther because they've got it off their chest. They were required to come and do that. It's helped. And that's key too. So between those two, it can be a game changer.
Yeah. I mean, the problem in policing is short-staffed, right? So do we have time to sit back and debrief a critical incident when there's 40, 50, 60 calls holding in the queue, waiting for you to hit that 10-8 button and get on to the next call? And then they won't let you do it after shift because that's going to be overtime and that's going to
Right.
cost them money. So yeah, we've just got to come together. Leadership, like you said, Rob, leadership has to really step forward and say, if we're not putting out the best possible product to help you as a community, then we're shortchanging you. So we're going to do what we have to do in-house to make sure you're getting the best response possible.
How is your family, like you have, we talked about your daughter earlier. How do they handle, I know. All you got to say is daughter and
16.
yeah, and teenager, and I'm out. I'm not. I'm stuck too, but at least for 2 more years. But maybe no. She But how did your? Because obviously, I now see the effects that my children had, and us teaching them to not talk because you just don't talk and you shut down. Have you seen that, or is there a difference in your household? I mean, now that you're on the outside, you're on retirement. Have you seen that in your family?
Yeah, so I had two dynamics. I love this question. I've never been asked this, so I want to talk about it for a second. I was married previously years ago, and I had a son in that marriage. I got divorced when he was about 6. So he only got to see me, right, every other weekend, Wednesday after school. You know how that goes, right? So he didn't get to experience as much of me on a day-to-day basis now that my daughter has, right? My son is 25, incredibly successful, doing great. My daughter is 16 and saw every moment of it. And I think the hard part for her was I did shift work, right? Worked overnights, 10 at night till 6 in the morning. So it was always, hey, baby, be quiet. Daddy's sleeping. Yeah, I know we have a birthday party to go to over at your cousin's. Daddy's not going to be able to go because he has to sleep. Daddy had a hard day. Let him decompress. So she just grew up like, okay, I'm not going to mess with it. And just always kind of leaned on my wife for how do we walk around the house today? Do we have to tiptoe, or is it okay, that I can make some noise today and just be a kid, right? I didn't really notice that because I was just coming home every day knowing, hey, I can deal with the problems out there. I really don't want to come home and deal with, hey, the faucet's dripping. We can't connect to Wi-Fi. Like I just didn't want to deal with that. I just wanted time to come home. I didn't want it to start on the way home with a phone call. Like, your daughter's acting up, deal with her when you get here. Like, it was one of those things where I knew I had a routine when I got home. And if you look at the documentary, every day was the same for me. I would come home, I would immediately go and work out either in the garage or at a gym close by. And that was let me get as much of this as I can completely out and exhaust myself. And then I could start. Now I'm calm. I can help my daughter with her homework. We can sit down and have these family discussions if we need to have them, maybe read a little book, do our prayer time, and then go to bed, and it starts all over again tomorrow. So mine was kind of like a cookie cutter, where Joe, oh my God, his was like a jigsaw puzzle. Like I didn't know when he came to work, like what to expect that day, because and you'll see it in the documentary. He was going through a divorce. He was dealing with his own addictions and his own struggles of depression. And I'm sitting back feeling guilty that I've got like this boring life, and he's got like all these complications. And but we balanced each other out. People that watched the film could say, hey, I'm kind of like Ernie. Like I come home and I got this routine. And others are like, oh, I'm Joe. Like I'm a mess and I'm okay with it. I'm an organized mess, which you're not, right?
No.
So it's interesting that you asked that question because two totally different dynamics.
Yeah. I mean, I watch, Ken had particular ways to do things. And if they weren't done that way, his feathers were ruffled, obviously, because that was the one thing I think he could control. And if you can control that, then maybe I can control the emotion inside. But it was a shit show.
Yeah.
Looking
Yeah,
back, it was
Eric,
a shit show.
you mentioned you never know, your daughter didn't know who you were going to be at any point in time. I mean, we had that argument, those exact words were said. I never know who's going to walk through the door. He would go on for 48 hours and come home around 9 a.m. Or 8. Most of the time we'd miss each other because I was on my way to work or taking our son to school. But, it was, I don't know who's going to walk through that door. And if it was the person that has his head down and kind of a blank look on his face and just went straight to the bedroom, I'm like, oh, great, it's going to be another one of those days, just stay away from him. And inevitably there would be an argument of some sort. But yeah, it's just, it's a hard dynamic to navigate. And, fortunately our son was young enough that he probably doesn't remember most of that. He was 10 when Eric passed. So.
Yeah, it's so wow, this is deep, right? Because it was really easy for me and Joe to try to go help community or help officers that were struggling, but they didn't know that behind our badge,
Yeah.
there people think, oh, these guys are going to show up and they're going to help and it's going to be great. But behind the badge that we're wearing is like, man, I barely have the energy myself to deal with what's going on. And I've got to take all that energy that I reserve for myself for later and really put it into this family or to this officer. And it's okay because that's what I want to do. I want to be of service to others. And if it means giving of myself, I'll give it every day. I will never say no, but then I've got nothing left when I get home. And it's not fair. It's not fair to the family. It's not fair to the kids. I know my daughter, she would always, when she was playing volleyball, I mean, the minute I would drive in the driveway, she's already outside with the volleyball in the yard. And I'm like, all right, like, baby, I'll do this for 5 minutes, but then I'm going in. And the hardest part is like, after 5 minutes, I'm like, look, I really want to go in. I want to take my gun, my badge off. Like I just want to be a human that's not a policeman for a minute. And the look on her face was, well, are you coming back outside? And it's like, yeah, baby, I'll be back outside. And it's one of those things where you just give. And even though it's to your family and you want to, man, it's just exhausting sometimes.
Yeah. Well, now I know too that on those same days I was working a full-time job too, and when I wanted to vent about my job, I mean, it was like either he was basically like, shut up, I don't care, or it would, it just wasn't the same. It wasn't like a spouse really listening to you vent about your day. And I understand now, why would he want to hear about my stupid office job when he just scraped up somebody off of a freeway? It doesn't apply. So, it doesn't make it okay, but these are the kinds of things that Christy and I are trying to get across to families that haven't yet, or hopefully won't ever go through what we went through. That these are the things that your spouses are dealing with, and we've got to figure out a better way to communicate within the family.
Yeah, I think one of the, to bring family members in like you, both of you, into an academy class where they're just getting started, to say, and bring in, let these officers and firefighters, let them bring their wives in, like make this a whole day, a week long, whatever you want it to be, to say, look, they're feeding you all this about all the great perks of the job. And, but let me give you a scoop of reality of what family members who have been living this for 10, 15, 20 years, like, listen to them for a minute and take note, because even though you say, that's not me, that'll never be me.
Right.
Write that down and go back and revisit that in your journal 10 years from now. And then ask yourself, am I the same person I used to be?
There's no way that you
Overwhelmingly no, right?
Yeah, right. That's why you don't look back on that, because then you'd have to admit that you were wrong and that this job changed you and your family. But that's why we're here. It's okay because you grow as a person, and you don't have to grow in a negative way, and you don't have to have what you deal with every day affect you in a negative way.
And it's not to say that, oh, you shouldn't do this job, this horrible stuff is going to happen. It's more about, let's figure out the tools and resources that we can offer you guys so that this doesn't happen. You can get through this. This can be a great working relationship, home life relationship. It's just everybody has to be on the same page.
Yeah, and so there's some classes, right, that we started introducing these into the training. I don't know if you all know about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. Yeah. Okay. So it really talks about, how trauma affects you at a young age, how it can even affect your physical wellness, your mental wellness. And I think if first responders actually had a class like that coming through the academy, so they could start thinking, okay, well, I was introduced to trauma at a young age, and I never really got a chance to talk about it or process it. Because when I got in trouble at home and I was yelling and screaming, I was told to go to my room and don't come out until you stop crying. So I never really learned how to emote because I wanted to come out of my room. So I had to learn just to stop crying, right?
Right.
So you will learn kind of, why do I react to certain traumas the way I do, or to certain calls the way I do? So it's a little bit of neuroscience, but if you understand who you are as an individual, because I didn't know who I was, I had to learn that along the way. It's kind of like, I'm gonna build this plane as I fly it, right? It's one of those life experience and learned experiences is a great master, a great teacher. But I just didn't know about childhood traumas. I didn't know why I would be affected the way I would be on certain calls.
Right.
I never got a chance to really process things as a child because I was told, no, you need to do this. You need to act like this. Yeah. Okay. And it messes with your schemas, right? I mean, you have a difficult time ever trying to process or emote. So I think if we can help these first responders early on in their career to understand a little bit about trauma and the importance of processing and talking about it, we may see a change. I mean, I don't know. I'm grasping for straws, but I'm desperate, just like y'all are.
I think we will. I think because you make it normalize it, you require it. The guys coming in, the guys and girls coming in now, they have a different mindset when it comes to talk. I mean, they look at our 16-year-olds. They will spew everything out, not to you, but to everybody else.
You're a different breed.
Yeah. And I think that's a good thing to a point, as long as they take in everything else. But that gives the opportunity, because here in Illinois, they're retiring out. Anybody that was Ken's age, they're all retiring out as quickly as they can, and we're not getting as many applicants because Illinois is not where it should be, for first responders in general. And then add the mental health, and then add these new bills that are coming in that they just need to get their stuff together, and adding a little grant here, talking about it during, voting season won't get it done. It's being consistent and making sure it's happening.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. When the phrase defund police, was real popular, and that was kind of the thing, it's more like, it's not defund. It's let's reorganize. Like, let's get our priorities straight.
Right.
Like, where is our priority? Is it to continue to buy, I don't know, more equipment? Is it hiring more people, or is it investing more into the people that we already have? And, it goes back to me. Like, I think about the training, right? They brought us in as a mental health unit to the academy, and they said, hey, we're going to let you teach the cadets a 40-hour CIT class. And I'm like, wow, it's about time. Like, this is great. We'll get to them early on in their career, and they'll learn about mental health and de-escalation. Well, the following week, then they go to tactics. And then you have the tactic instructor say, oh, forget all that crap those hug-a-thug officers just taught you. When you're out on the street, it's a fight for your survival. And they're like, oh, okay, so I need to forget all that and concentrate on this, because this is fun anyway. You're teaching me how to breach a door, close quarter combat, how to shoot from the prone to the kneeling to a standing, Like, that's fun. That's why I joined. Yeah, you're right. That mental health stuff, ah,
I'm not going to need it.
it just blows my mind.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. So, does your wife, I mean, is she grateful that you're retired now? Do you guys have a different, is the house environment air different, or is it still kind of, because it hasn't been that long since you've been retired?
Right. So I retired a year ago, January, and yeah, things so much better. I didn't stay retired long. My phone rang nonstop with some offers, and the honeydew list was getting longer and the pay sucked. So I was like, all right. And I love the vision of the organization that I'm with. So that was an easy sell. But as far as the stress level, I talked to her about it not long ago, and she said, "Oh man, like we went out and bought an RV, which I'd have never done. I don't know anything about an RV. I mean, I didn't know black tank, gray water. Like, I didn't know any of this stuff. I had to YouTube everything. But what it did was it got me to do something new. It got me to disconnect from the city and get out into um, the wilderness, let's call it, and go on these hikes. And for the very first time we went, I remember I was sitting outside in our little lawn chair, looking up at the stars. And she goes, "I just noticed something about you." And I was like, "What?" She goes, "I just saw you take a deep breath, like for
That's huge.
the first time ever." Yeah. So sorry.
Oh,
Um, it felt good to breathe. It felt good to breathe.
don't be sorry to show that.
No,
That's
absolutely not. I
yeah.
mean, can you imagine you hadn't been breathing that whole time and you didn't
Very
even know
shallow. Yeah. It was very shallow breathing for a long time. And now I'm conscious about it.
it?
I take those deep breaths, and I'm very thankful for where I'm at in life. And yeah, I mean, we as first responders, like you said, we see things we're not, as humans, or kind of we're not equipped to see these things, but we're going to see them. So we need to be equipped with how to deal with it, and that means equipping the family as well.
Absolutely. So, with that, we won't keep you much longer, although I think you probably just answered it, but I'm going to ask anyway. Um, every Monday, we have our Mindset Monday, Better by Friday tip. So, if you, Ernie, can just tell us again who you are and what your tip is to make it better by Friday.
Okay. Well, I am Ernie Stevens. I am a father. I'm a husband. I'm a former law enforcement officer, and I have learned this. This is what's going to help me get through Friday. Is if you can remember this acronym, G.E.B.Y, G-E.B.Y. G stands for gratitude. I start each day on my phone with a gratitude app, and I list the three things I'm grateful for and why. The E stands for exercise. You don't have to go crazy. You can just exercise about 20 minutes a day. Just get your heart rate up. The B stands for breakfast, or eating something nutritional. That means something green at some point during the week, like a vegetable. And then the Y stands for you. Take time to do something for you, to help you decompress, to help you get your thoughts together, to help you center yourself and be present in the moment. So if you can remember G.E.B.Y and practice that within your life, I know that I practice it in mine, and it's what helps me get through each week.
That is a great idea and easy to remember.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ernie, for being on. We greatly appreciate it. And I know taking time away from your family after work is kind of hard, but it's bettering all of us that are out here listening and seeing that it's worth it. That talking is worth it.
Well, thank
So
you for the opportunity. Sorry, man, y'all got me tonight,
don't be
man.
sorry.
Y'all got me.
Stop saying
Mm.
sorry. Nope.
But thank you for the opportunity. Anything I can do to help break the stigma out there for law enforcement, to help families, I'm at your 100% disposal, and you can always call on me. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, I stopped it. It's so amazing. I have goosebumps the fact that you consider and be so vulnerable. We were talking about that earlier. Vulnerability is such a strength that I think we need to
Yeah.
start adding that to our daily reminders for people that look, vulnerability is a strength. It's not a weakness. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, because I'm still learning how to be authentic and be the best version of myself. because for many, many years I wore this mask of this is who I want you to see when it really wasn't who I was, but it worked. And now that I've taken that mask off and I don't have to be that person anymore, I have to learn to be me, and it takes time.
Yeah,
It
you're still
does.
trying to figure out who you are as not being a police officer anymore. I mean, it's just like us. I'm still trying to figure out how to be. We were married for 20 years. We were together for 25. So, I mean, he's all I knew. So I'm trying to figure out who the heck I am without this man next to me, who in many times wasn't a very nice person. So, you know, and not a lot of it from his own fault. So we all have a mask that we were wearing, and we're all trying to figure out how to take it off and be authentic and be ourselves. So I appreciate you showing me that it's okay to continue doing this.
Yeah, and I come from that divorce side. So all of that brought our marriage down makes sense to me now. It's, the behavior's not okay, but I thought I forgave him years ago. I mean, we were divorced for 10 years. I thought I forgave him years ago, but I realized that I couldn't forgive something I didn't understand until after he passed away. And once he passed away, I'm like, I understand it now. It's still not okay, but I understand it now. And the weight he had to carry and the weight we carried, that secondary exposure of us thinking it's us that we could do better. It just, wish I could have told him, you know, I wish he could have seen that I forgave him, but he does now. I know that.
Yeah.
And he knows that, we have a voice. I did get to say thank you minutes or when he took his life. I didn't know. I texted him that night, thank you. And I didn't know those would be the last words. I'm grateful they were kind words and it wasn't on that upside of a different cycle that would, we lived for so many years, but this is the least that I can do for him and for the kids and for all the first responders is to talk about, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to show your feelings because it takes strength to show your feelings. And it's a whole different kind of strength.
Yeah, the vicarious trauma. I mean, look what happened in Florida with the two deputies.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Ugh.
vicarious trauma that happens because of suicide, it's beyond tragic. I mean, there's no words for it, but
Yeah,
it's real.
so
So, I mean, y'all keep doing what you're doing. I love it. If ever I can help
Yeah.
you or promote you, as soon as the link drops, I'll send it out on LinkedIn and Twitter and whatever platforms I can put it out there on to bring as much awareness to this as possible.
I appreciate it'll probably be about what do we say about 3 weeks?
3 weeks, I
Because
think.
we've got a few more to because we're only doing one at a time right now, once a week, so about 3 weeks. But I will send it to you as soon as I have it edited. I'll send it to you. I'm a little slow. I'm still learning the editing.
Hopefully, we don't need to edit much. I think
I know.
nobody stuttered, nobody dropped an
No,
F-bomb. Like,
Yeah,
not
usually
that
I have
usually
more
the
cautions.
podcasts I'm on are like, dude,
I
don't talk like that.
I already clarified. If I swear, is it okay? Because I swear like a truck driver. I've done pretty good so far. Shit is the worst word I've said, so that's pretty good.
I'm impressed.
I know you have no idea the restraint it takes.
That's
Well,
when my pause happens. So never mind. Earlier, I started to say, so I had to stop myself.
Yeah.
I'm a Cowboys fan, so you know the words that were coming out of my mouth last week. So, but again,
No, you're
thank
going
you
to
so
hear
much.
from us. Believe
Thank
me, you're
you.
probably going to wish you didn't.
Yeah. And if ever you need anything from us or if anybody needs anything, please don't hesitate. The number you called me on is if you even call and leave a message is my personal number. I use it for business as well, but it's my personal number. So you could call or text anytime. You can hand that out to anybody who may need to talk because I've done that and it's important.
Okay. Are y'all on LinkedIn at all?
Yeah.
So do you follow Scott Medlin?
No, I don't think so. That name sounds familiar though.
Man, look that dude up, and he would be an incredible guest for you to bring on. Medlin, Scott Medlin.
Oh, I spelled it right.
Yeah, he puts out he's got a great YouTube channel. But he talks about his own struggles with PTSD from the military and then as an officer, and the night that he was about to take his own life, and then what he learned from that. So he would be an amazing guest.
Yeah, it's
Sure.
interesting because Ken will never know. Everybody else does now because I finally started talking about it. But when my kids were little, I almost took my life. I put them to bed. He went to work, and I just didn't want to feel anymore, and I didn't understand. And I'm grateful that didn't happen. I'm grateful that I realized that and put the gun away and searched for help. I mean, it took many, many years, of course, to find the right help, but because that struggle is real, and I struggle from PTSD from something prior to my marriage to Ken that I thought I had gotten help with, and obviously marrying a first responder and not truly getting the help that you thought you had doubles that struggle. But it's you have to have that conversation.
Yeah, the trauma, it all goes back to trauma.
It
And
does.
what you said about the childhood trauma too, I actually asked Eric's sister, was there something that you know of that happened to him, as a child, whether it be sexual abuse or, I mean, I know there was some physical abuse, but it was, I hate to dismiss it, but the typical, 70s, 80s
Yeah.
abuse that we all
That was acceptable abuse.
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I truly believe that there was probably something because he had zero coping skills.
Well, and that's said. I think the majority of first responders become first responders because of trauma that they knowingly or unknowingly dealt with as a child.
Yeah, it's that Superman syndrome, right? And what's
Yeah.
interesting is if you look at an average ACE score for a first responder, it's the average is 4. If you look at the average of people in prison, it's 4. So why do some, right, become a helper profession and others end up in prison?
Right.
So it all deals with what is your community, what is your support system, what is, right? What is, right? There's so many things that play a factor into that.
Yeah.
But trauma is at the foundation. And like you said, just because they went into a helper profession doesn't mean that they're safe from themselves.
Right.
Because people that went into prison, they just got caught, right? So, wow, what a great discussion you could have. So,
Yeah.
again, thank you a million
Thank
times.
you. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. And then we'll probably ask you to come on again at another date.
Let's do it.
All right. Well,
All
thank
right,
you
take
so
care.
much. Have a good
Yeah.
night.